What's up, YouTube? Hey, all right. Uh, Let me do something right quick that I forgot to do because I do want some monitoring capabilities here. So let me grab my headphones. Put my headphones on. Give me a sec. Yeah, don't pay attention to my computer there. All right. Yeah. Okay, we're here. We're here. All right. Today we're going to do the. Well, actually, I was debating on whether I was going to do the articles or not, but we are. We're going to do them. We're going to because I think to get the full thing, you're going to have to do the articles. So bear with me on this. This is a little boring. Okay, so we'll try to make it fun, but Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Okay, so when people refer to Congress, a lot of times they talk about the House as Congress. Congress is actually both houses. Okay, it's the Senate and the House of Representatives, and the legislative powers are granted to them. Okay, so they can write law. That's pretty much what that says. Okay, so let's move on. The House of Representatives shall, this is Section 2, 2.1. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualification requisite for electors of most of the numerous branch of the state legislature. Okay. So, 2.2, Section 2.2. Okay. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. So you have to be you have to inhabit the state that you're running for, and you have to be a U.S. citizen for 7 years, and you have to be at least 25 years old. That's what it says. Okay, 2.3. A representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included with this union according to their representative numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians which are not taxed. In other words, if you're taxable, you can vote for them. Okay, that's pretty much the way I read it. Okay, 3/5 of all other persons. Uh, The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of Congress of the United States. And I could be wrong about how this is reading. This is where it gets a little boring, okay? Because it's just kind of setting forward rules and ideologies and all that. Some of this stuff is still relevant. Some of it isn't relevant. Some of it's been changed through amendments, which we'll get into later. Um, But it says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union. Okay, so if you're part of the union, they portion out the taxes to help those states. That's what it's saying. Okay. And the representatives are split up amongst the states accordingly. And according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined. Okay, so taxes and representatives are split amongst the states equally according to the amount of money they pay, in as well as the number of people that they have, okay, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians which are not taxed. 3/5 of all other persons. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meetings of Congress of the United States, within every subsequent term of 10 years. In such manner, they shall by law direct the number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least one representative. And until such enumeration shall be made, the Senate of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantation 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. This is all about how many representatives and taxes and all that stuff are distributed. Again, some of this is not really that relevant anymore, like the list of the numbers that each state has, because populations have changed, the amount of money that's being paid in has changed, therefore the amount of money that's going out and the representatives for each of those states have changed. So, but it kind of set forth a guideline, basically, in how to choose and how to distribute monies. Okay. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. Special elections. We're seeing that on TV. That's kind of what it is until the special election actually occurs, they actually give a writ, temporary executive authority to certain representatives from that state to be able to fill that position until the special election takes place. It's kind of how it works. And that pretty much is how it still works, okay? I mean, that's why they're always in a hurry to get these special elections done, because they want to fill that position with somebody that's there legitimately. Okay, the House of Representatives shall choose their speaker and other officers and shall have sole power of impeachment. Senate can't impeach. It's all up to the House of Representatives. Okay. They have the sole power of impeachment. Okay. They choose their own officers as well. So that's what that one was. Now we're in section 3. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Okay. This is one of the things that we've changed through amendments later that we'll get to. Originally, your state legislature actually which you voted into office, chose the 2 senators that were to represent that state on the Senate side in Congress. Now, the House of Representatives was popular vote. Okay? So, in other words, you yourself chose the House of Representatives. The states chose the senators. That's how it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a multi-tiered system. Okay? My personal opinion, we've kind of messed that up. Okay? That's just my opinion on it. But 3.2, immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of senators of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year. Of the 2nd class at the expiration of the 4th year, and at the 3rd class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year, and if vacancies happened by resignation or otherwise during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments, making the next meeting of legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. So, what this is saying about the Senate is that there's 3 election years for Senate. It's supposed to be. Okay? You're supposed to get, it's divided into thirds. Okay? It's supposed to be divided into thirds. Okay? Considering we have 50 states, there's 100 senators, technically it'd be 99, you would end up with 99 if you divide it into thirds, okay? So you would have these 3 groups. It's basically 1/3 gets reelected every 2 years. Okay. There's supposed to be an election for the Senate every 2 years, and it's divided into 3 groups. That's the way it's supposed to kind of work. If there's a vacancy there, then like your governor, for example, or whatever, would of your state would choose a temporary if their state legislature wasn't in, the governor would actually choose a temporary to fill that seat until the legislature was back into place. This is where we have really started kind of destroying the Constitution, because we popular vote senators in now and you can refer back to my Facts and Ideas of Our Forefathers, and even a little bit about the preamble stuff, and get a better idea of what our forefathers were kind of thinking when they made the Constitution and the selection process and everything else. They wanted a multi-tiered. They didn't want too much power, per se, in any certain person, group, or anybody's hands. They wanted power in everybody's hands. Okay? In parts of the government, the states, the people. They wanted everybody to have some control over who was selecting what for federal government. They wanted everybody's hands in on it. We've taken the states pretty much completely out of it. Okay, as far as your state government has no control over who's representing the state government in the federal government. So, to some degree, that's kind of why it's kind of hurting, and why I think we did wrong by making an amendment to change that. No person shall be a senator who shall not be have attained the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not be, when elected, be an inhabitant of any state for which he has been chosen. So again, you have to be a citizen longer to be a senator, 9 years to be a senator. You have to be chosen in the state which you live, okay, and you have to be at least 30 years old to be a senator. So those are the prerequisites for being a senator of the United States. The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. So see, that's where the executive branch actually ties into the legislative branch, because the executive branch, the vice president, actually is the president of the Senate. Okay. And so that's where the vice president has that tie, and he's kind of that in-between guy between the Senate. He has no vote unless there is a tie, which in the Senate right now we have 100 senators, and there's so if you had a 50-50 vote, that's where the vice president can come in and go, okay, I'm breaking the tie. So, but he's kind of that guy that kind of can push in the Senate the president's agenda, and he can be that guy that, you know, and if he doesn't like it, he has a say. He just doesn't have a vote. So he can talk about what he wants to get accomplished, but he doesn't have a vote unless it is a tie. So there you go. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation when the President of the United States is tried, and the Chief Justice shall preside. And no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of members of that are present. Now, what this is saying is that remember we said that the House does the impeachment, okay, but the Senate tries those impeachment. You got to think of the Senate as almost the lawyers of Congress. That's kind of the way it kind of somewhat works, okay. So the House has to start the impeachment. They actually have to do the impeachment. Okay, they have to vote on and approve the impeachment process. The Senate tries that impeachment. Okay, and it ain't just for the, you know, everybody thinks impeachment, they think the president. No, this also includes people in the Senate, people in in the House, Supreme Court judges, other people within the government. So the impeaching can be anybody that was elected in. Okay. They are held to oath or affirmation. And when the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice has to preside over the hearing. Okay. But 2/3, so you got to basically think of it like this: the Senate is also the jury, and 2/3 of those senators have to all agree that the impeachment should go forward. Okay. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to the removal from office and disqualification to hold any other office, or to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall be nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to the law. So, okay, when you're in office, to some degree, you kind of can't be tried. You can, but you can't. Okay, if you go out and kill somebody, then you can be tried for killing somebody. Okay, but when, let's say you're the president of the United States and you do something wrong, okay, that is illegal. Okay, well, they can't immediately send him to court and go, okay, well, you're going to be convicted of whatever crime it was you committed. You got to go to prison, because he's still the president of the United States. So the first thing that you have to do is impeach him. Okay, if the impeachment is successful, then that person can be indicted, and they can go through the trial process and punishment according to the law. Okay, and that's what that is talking about. Section 4: the times, places, and manners of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time make by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. Okay. So basically, they can change times, places, and manners of holding elections for senators and representatives. Each state can. Okay. But Congress can override those. Okay. Except for where you choose your senator. So in other words, if you vote at a certain place, or your senator covers a certain area, or whatever in your state, whatever, they can't change the polling places, okay, for choosing senator, is basically the way I read that, okay. 4.2, the Congress shall assemble at least once a year, and such meetings shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day, which pretty much, and see, that was one thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that originally the Senate only met traditionally like once a year. Okay. Now they might have extended that once a year for a week or two back in the day. Okay. Now it's become a full-time job. Okay. It's no longer just a job that people have, that because originally they had their own practices, whatever it might be, their own businesses or whatever, and they worked those businesses pretty much all year, and then they came in around December 4th. Well, that's kind of changed. I mean, they kind of work all the time. And it's part of the reason why our budget's out of control. It's part of the reason why corruption is the way it is, because they constantly feel like they have to do something. They have to do busy work. Have you ever looked at, I'm gonna show you something else. Look right up there. Okay, that right there is an app that you can get on your phone. It's the daily record for Congress. It's actually put out by the government. Okay, and I think it runs a day behind. So like today you're reading what happened yesterday, and then tomorrow you'll be reading what's today, I believe. They might post it by evening, but the thing about it is they just if you read through there, it's a lot of stuff of, oh well, we're going to vote on whether this national park should be named this, or this post office should be named this. They do a bunch of busy work. They really do. And I think they get so overwhelmed in the busy work that they actually don't do what we want them to do. And I'm not going to get into a whole lot of politics there, but they wanted to make their job sound more important. Okay. Section 5. Each house shall be the judge of the elections. Returns and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day, and may be authorized to compel the attendance of the absent members in such a manner, and under such penalties each house may provide. So few people can leave every day. There are consequences for those people leaving and absentees, but and they can qualify their own people. So there you go. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings. Okay, so the manner in which they proceed. Punish its members for disorderly behavior. They can do that as well. And within the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. So much like an impeachment, okay, and that's pretty much what it is. It's a form of impeachment. They can expel a member with 2/3 majority vote. So if 2/3 of the congressmen believe that this guy is a danger, another congressman, then they can vote those people out. They can keep them from being in there. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings, and from time to time publish the same, except in such parts as may, in their judgment, require secrecy. And the yeas and the nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal. Okay, and that's what that app is. It's a journal of each day. Okay. Neither house during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn more than 3 days, nor to any other place than in which the 2/3 shall be sitting. Okay. So basically, if the Senate decides they're going to go to Hawaii and sit, the House goes too, and vice versa. And that's basically what it's saying. And that they have to be in session at the same time, unless, now, if they need to adjourn for a couple days, okay, then that's okay, but no more than 3, okay? Or the other one is adjourned during that time too. And the reason why they do that is to prevent one side from conducting business without the other. Because they're supposed to, even though they're separate, they're supposed to be working together for the common good. Okay? And that's the reason why they have it that way. Section 6. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases except for treason, felony, and breach of peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses. And in going to return from the same, for any house, speech, or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. In other words, if you, and it goes back to what I was saying, to some degree, our federal government is somewhat excluded from being arrested and whatever, as long as they're in their place of business. Okay? If they are in session in Congress, a cop can't just walk in there and arrest them. Okay? They have to wait until they're at home, basically. Okay? But also, if they are in a speech or in a debate, they can't be questioned outside of that forum. So they have to be if they are in, they have to be questioned in the Senate if they are in the Senate doing work. Okay? So you have to hit it, you have to ask them those questions on the floor, which is full exposure to them. There's no privacy there. Okay? So if you think that a senator, I don't know, robbed a bank, okay, and the cops show up at Congress, they can't arrest them, but they can question them on the floor, which then is going to start a committee or whatever that's going to investigate them. And if 2/3 of that House or of that particular House of Congress, be it the House of Representatives or the Senate, if 2/3 of that group agrees, then they can kick them out. Once they're kicked out, all's fair in love and war. See what I'm saying? So, 6.2, no senator or representative shall during the time for which he was elected be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the, that's a hard word, emulance whereof shall be increased during such time, and no person holding office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. In other words, if the president asks you to be vice president and you are currently a senator, i.e. Mike Pence, okay, just giving that as an example, he had to quit his job as a senator to be vice president. You can't be vice president and a senator at the same time. Okay? So, that's across the board. Okay? Can't hold two positions at once. That's what they're saying. All bills for raising revenue originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. So all revenue-related bills, they have to be started by the House of Representatives. Okay. Now the Senate votes on them, and they can add amendments, and they can even, well, that's pretty much it. They can change what the House, and that's one of the things that has kind of changed. Because if you actually look at it, the Senate introduced their own tax plan. Well, the Senate's tax plan is no good. According to the Constitution, they cannot do that. They have to take the houses, make amendments to the houses, vote on it, get it approved, send it back to the House. That's how it's supposed to work, according to the Constitution. That's money-related stuff only, okay? Every bill which shall have passed in the House of Representatives and the Senate shall therefore become a law and presented to the President of the United States. If he approves it, he shall sign it. But if not, he shall return it with objections to that House in which they have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. If after such reconsideration 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent together with the objections to the other House, by which it shall likewise be considered. And if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. But in all such cases, the votes of both Houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against shall be entered in the journal of each House respectively. If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, okay, Sundays accepted, okay, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be law. In like manner, if he had signed it, unless the Congress by their adjournment prevent its return, in which case it shall not be a law. Okay, so basically what all that one's saying is that if Congress votes on a bill in one house and it passes, and then it goes to the other house and it passes, okay, it will be sent to the president. President has 10 days to sign that bill into law. If he doesn't sign it within 10 days and he just ignores it for 10 days, okay, that bill will be law. So he has to either within 10 days either sign that bill or he has to veto it, which is basically say, no, I don't like this bill and these are the reasons why, and give the things that he'd like to have changed. Then he can send it back to Congress. Congress can take those objections that he has to what was in the bill. They can add those objections to the bill and change the bill accordingly, and then pass it with a 2/3 vote. Okay. Or, and then it has to go through both houses with 2/3 vote at that point. Okay. Or if he doesn't and he ignores it for 10 days, then it automatically becomes law unless Congress is adjourned. And if Congress is adjourned, then he has to have it signed and back to them upon their re-adjournment immediately. So, or it just won't be ever made law. Every order, resolution, or vote to the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary except in a question of adjournment. Okay. Wait, hang on. Let me reread that. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary, except on the question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States and shall be before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and the House of Representatives according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. Okay, and so what that's saying is in the case of a bill, which is different than law to some degree. It's actually giving you two different things, but 7.2 speaks of, no, my bad. That was my bad. What this is talking about, if the president truly vetoes a bill, doesn't just have disagreements, but he just does not want that bill passed at all. He just doesn't want it. Okay? He can veto it, send it back with no changes, and say, no, I don't want this bill. But then they can still approve it through the 2/3 majority vote if 2/3 of both houses agree that it needs to be passed. So there's two different ways. One, the president can have objections and want to make changes. And then from there, the procedure is pretty much all still the same. Okay? On both ways. So Section 8, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts and exercises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and the general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. In other words, they can't tax... The federal government can't tax Florida more than they're taxing California. Okay? It's got to be uniform. That's where the current tax bill is fixing things, actually. Believe it or not, if you keep up with that sort of thing, some people want to, especially in Congress, want to talk about the fact that this new tax bill with some states like California and New York and some of these that have state income tax, Kentucky, there's a few others. There's only a handful really of them that have like state income taxes that are subject to it, but they get the money back. Right now as it is, those states are getting that money back. Those people that live in those states are getting that money back from the federal government that they're paying in on state income tax. Now you want to hear to some degree how ridiculous that is? Okay? Here in the state of Texas, which is where I am, we do not have state income tax. Okay, we have goods taxes and then property taxes. That's kind of what we have. Okay? They're not allowing us to write off the products that we purchase. They're not allowing us to write off our houses, okay, and not pay any of those taxes. But they're allowing these other states to write off their taxes because, well, they're that's not fair. No, it's completely fair that the way the new bill is that they're trying to push through is because then all the taxes are federally are the same across the board. They're getting rid of those little loopholes that certain states can use. Okay. So they're actually being more constitutional in the way that they're doing it because California and people in California, they need to get their state to lower their taxes or change the way they do taxes. Okay? Don't make the federal government pay because California can't get their stuff together. Okay? That's all there is to it. Okay? It ain't the federal government's fault that California is a bunch of money grubbing you know what. That's on California, not on the federal government. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. To borrow money on the credit of the United States. 8.2, that's another responsibility of Congress. 8.3, to regulate commerce within the with foreign nations and among the several states and within the Indian tribes. 8.4, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. Okay. 8.5, to coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. So Congress is all responsible for all this stuff. Okay. 8.6, to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. 8.7, to establish post office and post roads. Okay. Which is why they spend half their time voting on the names of post offices. I'm just saying. I mean, they are doing their job, but they're, it's like they prefer to spend all day naming post offices. Okay. 8.8, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Patent Office. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. Okay. To define and punish the piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. Okay. To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and to make rules concerning captures on land and water. We're at 8.12. I told you, these get boring, but, you know, they're fun. It's kind of good. They're boring, but they're good information. So it kind of gives you real perspective of what their responsibilities and how they're structured and blah, 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 blah. Right? To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money. To do that, you shall be for a... What? Wait a minute. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money. To do that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. Okay. So, in other words, they can raise armies to fight battles. Okay. But the money appropriated to that is good for only up to 2 years. They can't go longer than that. So, to provide and maintain a navy. To make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. To provide for the calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repeal invasions. So now we're talking about the militia, which, remember, everybody wants to think that the militia is not... I don't know. People get confused by that. They get confused by the term militia. And if you look at it from a historical standpoint, back then, most all militaries were militias. Okay. George Washington was part of the British militia here in the United States originally. And then he decided that what Britain was doing was wrong. And so he sided with the colonies and helped fight off the British. And anyway, so to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for government such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the United States respectively the appointment of officers and the authority of training of the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. Okay. See, we're describing the militia. Now, we make up the militia, and the militia and the military actually, believe it or not, are kind of the same thing. Okay? But we can be our own militia as well. Okay? But the militia is regulated. It's controlled. It's trained. by the government. The government makes the rules for the militia, for the military. Okay? A lot of people get confused by that. Military and militia are of the same origin. Okay? In modern day and age, we want to separate into three separate entities, and technically it kind of is. But the people make up both the militia and the military. Military is truly, fully government controlled. Militia isn't necessarily fully government controlled until they're called on by Congress. Just saying. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the Senate, in which the same shall, for the election of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. I'm not going to even explain that. Okay. We're getting close. We're on Section 9. There's 10 sections. So, and Section 9 is fairly short. Section 9.1. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. This is about immigration. It had a lot to do with, back then, some of the slave trading and things like that were going on, and it was basically when they brought in these people, it might be a slave, it might be just a worker, a paid worker, it may be when you bring in somebody into the country, they're saying that Congress can't prohibit those people from being brought here. Okay. So as long as they were brought here prior to 1808, so they were allowing up to 1808, so Congress could not prohibit. Now, after 1808, the rules changed a little bit. But during that time period, so this is kind of a null and void thing, but during that time period, a tax or duty may be imposed on bringing those people in, not to exceed $10 per person. Okay, so they tax them $10 a piece and say, there you go. Which back then was a lot of money, $10. 9.2, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, when in the cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. So habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless you're basically at war within the, so in other words, this, if you keep up, this terrorist guy that was just tried, that went through full habeas corpus, they didn't have to. It's right there. The privilege of habeas corpus, of the writ of habeas corpus, shall not be suspended unless, in cases of rebellion or evasion, the public safety may require it. That was a form of invasion. It was basically war on our embassy in Syria, or Benghazi. Okay. No bill, Libya. That's where it was. Benghazi, Libya. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. Pretty self-explanatory. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. Okay. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. Okay, so our government can't tax something that Alabama wants to ship anywhere. They can't put a outgoing tax. And the reason why they did that was this. When you go back and you actually look at history, there were taxes that were being implemented by England on products, and they were actually discounting taxes for England itself, but they weren't discounting those taxes for the things coming to the U.S. It wasn't the U.S. at the time, it was the colonies, but which was still under British control at the time. So they were taxing things all unfairly for one to the other. That's why all this stuff was being put in there. Is because of the way that Britain was taxing certain places differently than other places. And so it was a big fiasco there, and they felt it was very, very unfair, and it was. No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another. No, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obliged to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. In other words, is it free trade within the United States? So a ship can leave Michigan and deliver to Louisiana, and there's no taxes or duties in doing so. Okay? And that all taxes and duties amongst goods from one state to another state all have to be equal. That's kind of what it's saying. No money shall be drawn from the treasury, but in the consequence of appropriations made by law, which, remember, all originates in the House, and a regular statement and account of receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. Okay. No title of nobility shall be granted to the United States, and no person holding office of holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without any consequent of the Congress, except any present emolument or emolument. That's a weird word. Emolument. Say that 5 times. Emolument. Office or title, and I'm probably saying it wrong, but emolument. Or title of any kind, whatever, from any king, prince, or sovereign state. Okay? So in other words, nobody in office of the United States can be called king, lord, sir, sire. They cannot gain a title from another country at any point in time. Just saying, they can't get a crown, and they can't get, anything that shows that they have any power whatsoever in another country. That's basically what it boils down to. Okay, so like Sean Connery couldn't run for president unless he got Britain to completely denounce his sireship, his knighthood, whatever. So, all right, we're in section 10, last one. This one's fairly short. It's only got 3. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. So in other words, all that stuff that we just listed is all up to the feds. Everything else is left to the states. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any imposts or duties or imports or exports except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws, and net produce of all duties and imposts net the produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state or imposts or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of Congress. So they can't put taxes on that stuff unless, except for just to cover the wages of the employees to inspect things. And then that can still be changed by the federal government. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops, or ships of war in time of peace, enter any agreement or compact with another state, or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. So, in other words, you can't make treaties during the time of peace as a state where you're trying to benefit another country or whatever. You kind of do it. You have to go through the federal government, basically, is what it's saying, which is fine. Whatever. So that is Article 1. And I know this is a long video. It's over an hour long. That's why I was considering not doing the articles, because you could actually break those down. But if you broke them down, you really got to kind of do them, each article as its own video. You can't go too much into, well, there's this, and this. And I'm not even really going to edit this video. I'm going to put it up, flaws and all, just the way it is. I'm just going to transfer it to my computer, upload it to YouTube. There's nothing in there, no cuss words or nothing like that, so it's pretty basic, pretty simple. There may be some things that some of y'all might, whenever I give a little bit of opinion on certain things, that y'all may not like. But that's just kind of my opinion, so, and I understand that, and that's cool. So, it is a long video. I'm sorry about that, but we'll see you in the funny papers.